Very odd. Stephen Hall, the former chief of Russian operations for the CIA, explains it thusly. The idea of a private gun ownership is anathema to Putin. So the question is why? Why was a pro-gun campaign being hatched by a leader in Putin's own party? The answer put forward here that Putin was reaching out to attract the NRA, specifically over to Russia. This is part of what the Justice Department alleges, and again, the case is only beginning, but what they allege was a covert influence operation, torsion, cultivating ties with the NRA all the way back in 2010. He and Batuna become NRA members, which is weird. They begin attending the NRA yearly conferences in the U.S., which are about domestic politics. They meet with top NRA officials. They cultivate these friendships. The pictures tell the story. In fact, 2 times they got senior NRA officials to go to Russia, all expenses paid, of course. 2013, the president of the NRA, which if you follow politics, you know is a big job and something of a conservative star among people who care a lot about gun rights, which is a lot of people in America. His name there, you see him, is David Keene. He goes to Moscow. The NRA president introduced by guess who? Yes, Maria Butina. And then they declared no 2 people were more alike than Russians and Americans, so they had to work together.
Maria, thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here today, partly because over the course of the last 3 years, I've hosted your Senator Alexander Torshin at the National Rifle Association annual meetings in Washington. The NRA has 5 million members. We work with everyone, both in the United States and, of course, here in Russia. There are no peoples that are more alike than Americans and Russians. We're hunters, we're shooters, we do all the things, we value the same kinds of things, and we need to work together.
There are no more peoples more alike than Americans and Russians. I mean, it's fine if you want to bring people together with commonality, but that's not usually what you hear from highly conservative political operatives in America, certainly not back then, 2013. Fast forward to December 2015, the middle of what is, of course, the pre-presidential campaign season. Keene, as well as other top NRA leaders, include future NRA President Pete Brownwell, and they head back to Russia. This is their second visit. They go to Moscow. Butina facilitating a meeting with the CEO of a private Russian gun manufacturer, which produces a sniper rifle identified by the Pentagon, not for domestic use or hunting, but actually as a threat to American soldiers. The NRA leaders treated to a tour of that facility and a chance to, of course, shoot some guns on site. The NRA reportedly spent $30 million to support Trump in 2016. And on the one hand, they do typically support Republican nominees. But here's what you need to know. That was triple the amount they spent on behalf of Mitt Romney just 4 years prior. And then in January, you get this report in McClatchy, the FBI investigating whether Russia used this relationship with the NRA to illegally funnel foreign cash into the gun rights organization as part of an effort to support Trump. So ever since Maria Butina was arrested and charged with her conspiracy on behalf of Russia, the NRA has consistently declined to comment to all kinds of sources and all kinds of publications on this association with what is now an indicted Russian spy facing those allegations. Now, journalist David Corn is raising this question about whether the arrest of Butina caused a leadership shakeup shortly after at the NRA. Corn writing that on May 7th, the NRA released a curious press release declaring Oliver North, who has his own history as a key player in the Iran-Contra scandal, but is also a standing NRA board member, was now, quote, poised to become the new president. This changing of the guard and how it happened was odd, he writes. Earlier that day, Peter Brownell, then finishing his first term as NRA president, had announced he would not seek a second annual term. For 15 years, the NRA leadership had followed a pretty specific pattern. We're getting deep into the bylaws, but it's actually quite important. So here's how Corn explains it. An officer elected by the board to serve 2 consecutive annual terms as second vice president, then 2 as first vice president, and finally 2 as president. But the Brownwell to North transition broke this process and precedent, puzzling many NRA watchers. It even puzzled the incoming president of the NRA himself.
Colonel North, your reaction to being elected to as president of the National Rifle Association?
Well, it's an unexpected privilege. I'm grateful for the unanimous support of the board. I did not expect that this was going to be happening at this annual meeting, but As soon as I get everything in order in my family, because this was very sudden, I'll be back to take that gavel.
Those kind of on-camera interviews are useful. May have sounded like a basic question, but we learned from Oliver North's own mouth this was unexpected. This was sudden. He was getting ready to adjust at the last minute. And then you have a true state secret that was unknown, at least to the public at that time. 2 weeks earlier in April, FBI agents clad in their tactical gear were raiding Butina's apartment where they arrested her. Now, we know that from these reports, and Korn asks, did that FBI investigation of Butina lead to NRA President Peter Brownell's decision to, in the words of Oliver North, suddenly step down? He had, of course, after all, interacted with Butina in Moscow 3 years earlier. And the NRA could easily shed light on this. We would love to bring you their side of the story. Any comment, anything vague, anything. But they are declining to comment tonight. Same for Brownell. Korn reports he's not taking calls. I'm joined now by the reporter at the center of the action, David Korn, Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones. David, we always learn a lot from you. I appreciate you joining me this Friday night.
Thanks for having me on the weekend.
Heading into the weekend, you have a lot in this story. As you know, Rachel has been on many pieces of this story for quite some time.
Yeah.
What is advanced through what happened with the NRA? And let me start with the biggest question. I don't need to save it. Reading between the lines of your reporting, are you saying you have reason to believe there is another indictment coming pursuant to the NRA case?
I'm not saying that. I don't know that, and I don't make any predictions on what the Mueller investigation is going to be or the Butina investigation, which is separate. We keep being surprised. And the big picture here, Ari, is that we keep learning new things that we didn't know a week ago, 6 months ago. And so on all these investigations involving Michael Cohen, Trump, Russia, and of course the NRA investigation. But it was, as you noted, it was very puzzling when the NRA went through this leadership change. I remember getting the press release, and it was weirdly put. Oliver North is poised to become NRA president. Not that he's been chosen NRA president, but he's poised to become NRA president. And as he put it, it was news to me. And no one could really explain why this very hierarchical organization that had very strict rules of secession in terms of leadership would all of a sudden pluck a guy out who didn't see it coming and make him president of the NRA when he wasn't prepared to be. And then only recently, with the Butina case, did we learn about this FBI raid. And remember, her partner, romantically and politically, was a guy named Paul Erickson, who was an NRA activist. And he had been working with her to infiltrate, penetrate, make connections with people in the NRA and other conservative groups. So if she were raided, as she was, one would expect him to know about it and word to start filtering out, which could have caused a tremendous panic within the NRA and might have led to anyone being connected with Butina to be scared. I'm not sure about an indictment, but to be scared of being caught up in this criminal
certainly
case.
Exposure.
Yes, and Peter Brownell was very much involved, having gone, on trips that Butina organized and having been one of the NRA highest officials that she had cultivated.
When you look at the NRA, which has a lot of seasoned political professionals, people may disagree with their views on gun rights and access to guns, but these are people who have been around Washington, made it to the top of one of the most powerful organizations around.
Yeah.
How can one benignly or positively explain the complete idiocy or ignorance that would be required to think that an authoritarian country would have a vibrant private gun rights movement?
There's so much puzzling about this. In the book I did with Michael Isikoff, Russian Roulette, we wrote about the Butina case before it became a criminal case, and we noted that she had shown up at NRA events and other conservative events like CPAC, the annual get-together, and was really trying to make friends with some of the leading officials. In fact, one fellow who said, by his own admission, he's in his 60s, doesn't have a lot of hair, has a little bit of a punch. He says, I'm not used to young,